welcome to another podcast with Liver and Mental Health. It's John again today. That makes it sound like there's more than us. Oh, I don't know about that. But hey, I'm back. Sorry there wasn't a podcast last week, but I've got some exciting news. I've won a pot of money to get the professional Zoom account where I upload and record my podcast from to a professional account. Now, I'm absolutely bamboozled because there's so much more I get on this account now. It's not a free account. It's absolutely amazing. So I just want to say a big thank you to Lowestoft Town Council for funding that money and accepting it and getting it sent over to me quickly. I couldn't have done this without you. Also, your artwork is in the processes of being added to my screens. That won't make it onto this video, but that will be on the videos going forward. So I can't thank you enough for that. I also want to say thank you to all the supporters that keep asking and liking the videos, keep dropping comments and just sharing my work, if it be a podcast, a blog. I just want to say thank you to that as well. Today, I've got a young man with me called Julian Claxton. He's an award-winning photographer and, if I dare say so myself, a very good filmmaker. I've learnt my bits. So I'm going to hand over to Julian to introduce himself and then we will get cracking.
Thanks very much, John. Firstly, it's a pleasure to join you on your podcast. Having been an avid watcher and seen what you do, it's fantastic to actually be on one, John, and to watch you progress as well, which is really good. So my name's Julian. I'm a editorial, documentary, kind of corporate photographer and filmmaker, based in the east of England. I love what I do. I've been a professional photographer for about 20 years. Used to be a medical photographer and worked in the NHS for a good few years and then set up on my own maybe about 14, 15 years ago. And these days I shoot a whole variety of work. Perhaps my kind of the proudest work I do, which we'll no doubt come on to later, is the project that I run in Uganda with street kids called Give a Child a Camera, which is something I set up in 2015. That's something I'm really proud of. But yeah, so that's kind of me in a bit of a nutshell, really, John.
Nice one. We definitely will touch on the Uganda work because I might actually have a phone for you to use for a camera to take out there.
Oh, nice.
That's an old phone. We don't use it anymore. So unless my partner wants to use it for her to get a better phone because her phone's rubbish, I might have a phone for you to take out there.
Nice, John. Lovely.
So I'll let you know about that one. But my first question is to you. What does mental health or mental ill health mean to you? And I personally don't think there's no right or wrong answer. For the simple fact is it means so many different things to different people. And I've also had a different answer given to me each time that I've asked this question doing a podcast.
Yeah, John, come on. You start with a bang, don't you? Jeez. Well, I guess kind of first and foremost, to me personally, mental health means, it's a way that we all behave. First and foremost, it affects our kind of emotional stability, behaviour, perceptions in life, and everything we do, really. And I think, years ago, obviously, it was never talked about really in depth, especially male mental health was never ever talked about. And obviously these days, it's kind of, I don't want to say necessarily in fashion, but it's because it's not a fad. It's really important, and I think even people that perhaps feel they don't suffer with negative mental health are now opening up and talking about things. So I guess, John, sort of for me, it all comes down to that kind of well-being, that emotional well-being. I mean, for me, the biggest relief and kind of joy I get out of life, to be quite honest, are the simple things like getting on my bike, cycling to a beach, camping overnight on a beach, lighting a little stove, having a coffee with a mate or something, or even just on my own. And that's like escapism for me. And that's a chance to clear my head, to just talk rubbish, to enjoy company, to enjoy the simple things in life. And I think we're so wrapped up in this materialistic world that actually there's a lot more to life than the latest phone, the latest laptop, the latest whatever car or anything else. It's kind of important to get back to the basics in life. So I guess I've kind of gone a bit sort of round the streets with this one, but
that's fine, fella. That's fine.
It's all about that emotional well-being, really. That's what I would put it down to for me personally, and that perception that we then give out in life, in our behaviour and the way we work, mate.
Yeah, I've not had that type of an answer from the other podcasts I've done, so that is absolutely brilliant. I love it. Sometimes I let people know what the first question is beforehand, and I forgot to mention it to you. I was going to let you know, but I forgot to message you and just say this will be the first question. So sometimes I like putting people on the spot.
Oh, 100%. I agree. And you can't overthink it. And I generally think you get a bit more of an honest answer as well.
Yeah. So, where should I go next? Let's bring in Uganda. Let's hear what the story was about, and I'm going to drop Julian's website in the comment in the bio below when we post on YouTube, so you can have a look more at his work and stuff. But yeah, just explain what it is, because when I first met you and you talked about it and showed us the clip when we interviewed you for the Barrow Castle film.
That's right. Yeah.
We were all impressed. So let's just hear a little bit about it, please.
So John, I've always travelled a lot in my life, mainly for work, but for leisure as well. Like when I was in college, I used some of my student loan to travel around North Africa and all sorts.
Nice.
I didn't spend it necessarily the right way, but had an absolute ball. And do you know what, John? 10 years ago, exactly 10 years ago, I cycled from Suffolk in England all the way to Rwanda. And that journey, talk about mental health, that changed my life, completely changed my life. I ended up post that journey getting married. I never sort of really thought I'd probably get married prior to the journey, but I spent a lot of time like camping in the Sudanese desert and you know, being harassed at borders and locked up in a cell for a few hours. And it kind of made you think a lot about life and the things that are important and how valuable connections are in life, you know. And I got to Uganda, and it was the country where I had loads of hassle, John. I got knocked off my bike. I had money stolen, and a lot happened in Uganda. But I just fell in love with the people and the country.
That's it.
Yeah. So about a year and a half later, when I got back to the UK, I went back to Uganda. And to cut a very long story short, I took an old 35mm camera that someone had given me, and they said, "Oh, would this be any of use?" And so I went back to Uganda. And a few of the kids were like playing with the cameras and everything. And I came across this little school high in the mountains, miles from anywhere. And the kids were just enthused with the cameras, photography. They'd never used cameras. They'd never seen them.
Yeah.
And I said to the teacher at the time, or the guy who opened this little community school, I said to him, I'll come back next year or later in the month, or later in the year, and I'll bring some cameras and we'll teach you photography. And that was the kind of start of the project, really. It was a bit organic. I didn't expect to keep going. I literally turned up a few months later with a rucksack full of old cameras, 35mm cameras, and just started teaching the kids photography. And we're talking basic, John, like how to hold a camera, how to take pictures, where the lens is, where the flash is, and everything. And the kids were just amazing. And because they'd never used cameras, because they certainly at the time back then they didn't have Facebook or social media or anything like that, their pictures, John, were really, really honest.
Yeah
they weren't influenced by anything. So you actually got a look inside a Ugandan rural home. You got to look at a foster mum or someone in the community who's looking after kids or their friends and everything. And that kind of spurred me on, really. Like I say, the kids shot amazing work. I decided to keep going back year after year, recycling old cameras, taking them out there and teaching these kids. And it's got now to such a stage, John, that I've put a couple of children in full-time education that have finished education, but put them in further education now. to learn art, photography, and so on and so forth. And it's
Nice
getting to
one.
the point, yeah, it's getting to the point now where we're trying to channel the kids to actually think about photography or art or creative subjects as a bit of a sort of a bit of a career, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm off out there in a few months' time again for a little while to run the next workshop with a load of street kids in Uganda. So yeah, I suppose that's in a nutshell is the project. And if you want to talk about kind of mental health, it ties in really well, because certainly out there it's not really recognized, especially in the rural country. You know, mental health is probably like it was here 50, 60 years ago. It's not talked about. It's not.
Yeah.
You just have to get on with it, quote unquote, whatever that means. And I've seen, you know, kids that have been abused out there that counsellors have kind of told me about, or health workers have told me about. I've seen kids that, you know, have lost mum and dad to HIV, because a lot of the kids I sadly work with have hepatitis B, HIV, and everything. And I've seen these kids kind of on the edge. But what photography does in its simplest form, it upskills them, but it gives them an extracurricular activity, something to take their focus away from life or school or whatever they're doing, or their family. And it gives them just that chance to be creative. And, you know, studies have shown, as you know yourself from our work on Borough Castle and stuff, creative thinking and creativity broadens the mind and improves mental health, you know.
And I wonder, because when it comes to creativity, I say bollocks to it, because I hate arts and crafts. I'm not very good at it. And when it comes to the Borough Castle group, if we're doing arts and crafts, I'm probably the first one that'll stick my hand up and curse, and everyone laughs about it. But I still do it and get a sense of pride. So with some of the children that you were teaching the camera works, do you sometimes see that side in them, that some of them are a bit wary and a bit don't know if this is for me? Do you see that in them out there? Or
I see, John, that some of the kids, I suppose that it's kind of a bit two-pronged, really, because I see kids that have, like, sadly, one of the last groups I worked with, the mums of all the kids I was working with, they were all sex workers on the Uganda-Rwanda border. So these kids, their connotations of men in their lives is generally a pretty negative one. So I go in there, you know, hey, sort of band into this room, start teaching, introduce myself, showing examples. This is what we want, and blah, blah, blah. And it kind of takes them probably a good week to 10 days to warm to me, because they're just not used to this. They're thinking almost, what am I after? So in that sense, they've been a bit wary. I suppose that in the other sense as well, John, that because it's so different to what they've ever done before, like I say, most of the kids, not all, but most of the kids have never used a camera.
Yeah, definitely.
They tend to be a bit more reserved.
Yeah.
And I think it takes them a while to not be afraid. I mean, you know yourself, you say you kind of might not be very good at arts or crafts, but you are creative because of what you're creating here.
Yeah.
That's still creative, isn't it? And I think that once the kids warm to just that freedom to try something, it kind of opens doors for them, and they find that.
Yeah, that really amazes me, just watching the short clip that you showed us when we interviewed for your Borough Castle film, and we're going to go on to that in a minute. But how just, you saw like how excited they were, exactly. And you could see the passion that someone had brought in, like a camera, just to show them how to use it. And you think they probably haven't got phones. They probably are not sure if it's right for Uganda, but probably haven't even got shoes. They've probably got flip-flops. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, spot on, John. Most of them haven't got anything. You're right.
And for someone to come in and show them that look, you must mean the world to them.
Bless you. I find it, and I guess ultimately, not only do I feel that it's kind of improving their mental health, what they're doing, and that's what they're doing, not necessarily what I'm doing, what they're doing, but it certainly improves mine, John, because I come back from that and I'm uplifted, to be quite honest. I spend a
Yeah.
lot of my time working with really lovely clients, but obviously I'm in the Western world. You know, things are completely different, and you
Hectic.
can't even compare. But I'm going back there. I'm sleeping in a tent, or I'm sleeping in someone's house in the village. You know, there's often not a toilet, or certainly a flushing toilet. There's not a
Yeah.
toilet or anything. And it's that kind of, it goes back to that what I was saying earlier about that emotional connection with the world, or whatever you want to say. So it's really good for me personally. I get a hell of a lot out of it. But the kids, they thrive on it, John, because they're learning new skills. And ultimately, each child with the workshops that I run, which are about 2.5 weeks long, 3 weeks long at times, the kids get their own like photographic album, which again contains pictures, of their family and stuff. That's stuff that they never dream of having. So they get that, but they're also seeing their work exhibited. Large prints exhibited in UK cities or towns, exhibited in Uganda. So it's that sense of kind of achievement for them as well, which is really important.
See, I'll bring it on to Borough Castle now, because that ties it. When I first started the Borough Castle group, long before we thought about setting a film up, getting a film about the project and stuff, it was a 2-year project, and also there was a mention of a book being created of the memories of like what we've done and how it was done and stuff like that. Now that intrigued me a little bit more, that did, to like stay on the project. So, and then when we finally got the copy of the book, that was I was a part of that.
Yeah.
So I can relate to how they feel about getting a print, and like seeing your name in the book or seeing your picture in the book. That really uplifts you. It really does give you that, oh, I was a part of that. Yeah, nice one. Well, look at what we've achieved.
100%.
So I can really relate to them at getting their prints and like a book, like you said. I can really relate to that. That would be a big uplift. It was for me. And then also the Dr. Hill's casebook study. I wasn't a part of that, but my cousin was. But I didn't want to be a part of it because I was doing too much as it was already with other bits I'm involved with. But I was always asking how it was going and stuff like that. So I was like, wow, to be allowed a book of that as well, and know at a part of the project, that really uplifted me as well.
100%.
So, but go on.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I hear what you're saying, like, especially, well, the Dr. Hills definitely, because obviously I was involved in that, and that was mind blown. But the Borough Castle thing, even though I joined the project really at sort of the last few months of it, which was a shame in many respects, because there'd have been a lot of other stuff I'd have loved to have done. I felt, I mean, I've had my work kind of, published nationally, internationally, but to actually have it in that form, in such a beautifully created book and story of the project, I felt exactly like you did, John. It was emotionally, it was really great to see. So I totally concur with what you're saying there, chap.
Well, that brings me on nicely. We're going to talk about the film and that. How did you think that you would come into a group that suffers with mental health, some more severe than others, some really like mental health, and some just liking to get out and about? How did you think that you were going to fit in to a mixed group of people, diverse, if you'd say? And how did you think you were going to get on with that?
John, when I first kind of tendered or pitched or whatever you want to say for the work, it was out of more excitement than anything else, and that's a genuine reason for doing it. It was my first kind of experience of working on a longer term project, even though it was at the end of it. My first experience of working on a longer term, and I didn't really think about like you guys in the sense of your kind of like suffering mental health issues or anything, or living with mental health issues. I'm very much a people person, and most of the work that I do, where possible, it involves telling stories of people through photography or film, mainly through photography. And I was just excited to get in there and to get to know you all. And that's kind of, I suppose, as I said, my biggest regret with that is, and it couldn't happen because of funding and everything else, it just didn't work. My biggest regret is I wish I'd have started maybe 6 months earlier, and I could have had maybe a good month to 6 weeks, like ingrained in the almanac with you, to kind of get to know you all a lot more. But I just dived into it, and I was very conscious that it needs to be a kind of a softer approach. And I use that in a lot of photography situations, because there's no point just diving in with my cameras, quick, smile, do this, do that, because that just upsets people and puts people.
Definitely, totally agree with that.
Whereas, going in and kind of, I remember that one of the first sessions I went to was at the Time and Tide.
Yeah.
And although we done although I'd done quite a bit of filming there, it was all sort of very set back, but it was just a pleasure to watch the group dynamics. And I think for me, that was the biggest success of what I bought for myself, I'm talking about, is that I could just sit back and watch the group dynamics and just gradually feed into that.
I'll just apologise for my dog. She's probably heard a bird fart in the back garden. That's what we tell the grandkids anyway. But yeah, for me, you didn't come in and impose yourself like up front and in people's faces with it. You took your time. You took your time to get us up. You took your time to get to know all of us, but on an individual base. Like every time we would talk, it was all you'd always say big man or big fellow or big man, and that to me was a nice way of just calm and knowing that you're there. And I really appreciated that way you talking to me. Although I'm not so big now, I've nearly lost 3 stone, Julian. So that's a
you have. I noticed, mate. I noticed. Looking good.
But yeah, and there's a clip. I don't know if I can get it in the video because I don't know if I can master it yet. But there's one of my favourite clips of the video is from 2 lads that were from the Yarmouth area and not been on the project long like you have, and they opened up to you.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
and that was like, yeah, I what they said, I felt that as well. So like me and you did a separate filming session over there as well because of COVID.
Yeah,
and I felt like I could talk to you about my story left, right, and centre. I didn't feel pressured. So you've got that about you as well. You make us feel at ease, and you don't pressurize us, if that makes sense.
Cheers, John. I appreciate that. I've always tried to adopt that approach, and I think a part of that, to be quite honest, John, comes from my work when I used to be a medical photographer in the NHS. I was chucked in, as well as photographing and filming sort of operations and stuff. I often would have to photograph for like sort of like medical history reasons, like people, let's say, that were having breast surgery or something done, and people that were suffering really toughly with their mental health, their body was changing, and they had to come and see me, a male photographer, and have their where a breast had been removed and had to have their body photographed. And I learned very quickly that you can't rush these things. It's about listening to people and being honest with people. And I've seen so many people, and I'm sure you see it an awful lot, that people say they listen, but actually they're not plugged into what you're saying at all. They're either looking at their watch or just want to get onto the next job, the next thing. And definitely. I work with some very good photographers and filmmakers, and some of them are outstanding, but they wouldn't necessarily fit into this kind of working with people closely, because they just don't have that level of empathy. And But I think, yeah, I just try and always just listen, really, because that's what we need to do in life, isn't it? It's just listen and let people feel comfortable. I mean, I remember when I picked you up, when we were filming that little clip for Borough, I said, you know, John, I need you to I need to interview you, but and you said, oh yeah, that's fine, pick that. And that surprised me, actually, that you felt so comfortable, like just getting in a car, driving over there and chatting. And that was, for me, that was a real highlight for me as well, you know.
I hate being on the camera. I hate doing this, but it makes, when I've done that and it gets put onto you, when I put it onto YouTube, I feel like I've achieved something. I've done that because you showed me how to create a video. You've took the time with me to show me how to do it and stuff, and I feel like, wow, I'd have never, when I was at school, I would have never dreamed of editing a video or writing blogs or nothing like that. That's like way above my head. I would have never dreamed of that. So I thank you for all the help and support you've given me. But like I say,
yeah, no, I was just going to say, without cutting you off, sorry, John, I was just going to say it's a pleasure for me to be able to help you, but I think it's more and it's not just a pleasure to be able to help you. It's a pleasure to see you flourish and to put yourself out there. As you know, I said earlier that, you know, I know people that have seen you talk, and the strength that you bring with that lived experience, but the fact you're putting yourself out there doing things like this, I just think how far you've come, really, almost, you know, since I've known you, is just extraordinary. And it's only going one way. And I'm sure, like we all do, I'm sure we all have ups and downs and peaks and troughs of our mental health. But the important thing is to remember that what you're doing is being watched, listened to, and people are genuinely tuning into because they want to hear your story. And I think that's all credit to you.
I say this all the time, and I did a talk the other day, and they said that's really good of you. But I don't want the fame from this.
Mm-hmm.
I just want people to talk about mental health and get a better stigma around mental health. I don't, if something I say or guest or something that you say or something I put in a blog, if someone can take something from that and use it and adapt it, it's been a success for me. So that's all I want, is that someone can take something away from what I do, or a guest says. I just want that someone, or go and then start a conversation with someone that might be struggling, and they've found, oh, someone's struggling, we could go and help them because we've seen this or heard about this, or do something like that. That's all I want from it. I don't want the fame.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think if we can, I say we because of what you're doing, but if we can influence people, even just one person, and I know it's more than that, but even just one person, and it takes them away from that kind of that trough that they're in, and just brings them up a little bit, or makes them realize that they need some extra help or support from somewhere, something, then that's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, I swear down by it. That's lived experience. And this is a story about my partner. I went to her with a physio appointment, and they handed her a book that a person had written about being in pain. Okay. Now, I never would have thought of lived experience being involved with physio.
Yeah.
That, as silly as it sounded in my head, when I come away from it, and I've talked about this loads to other people, actually, that's probably a really good area for people with lived experience to come through and talk about stuff with pain.
100%.
Yeah, and I was like, actually, that's cracking. I really like that. That was like, yeah, fair play to the person that did that.
And it shows, doesn't it, John, how we're changing in certainly in the West, how things are changing. Like you're saying, they're bringing that lived experience now into pain management and everything else, and you know, that would have never happened. So things like this and other elements are definitely working, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. I would like to just say to anybody that is listening, if you've got any comments for me or Julian, just put them in the comments. And if Julian doesn't see him on YouTube, I can pass them over to him, and I'll get back to you when I've got an answer, or if I can answer a question, then I will. But just go away and just think, just listen and talk to somebody if you're struggling.
I would actually, I just add on there, John, that you talked about the Borough Castle thing, and I think one of the joys of making that film and putting together like all the information that was collated, and obviously the film was nowhere near what I planned because of COVID, suddenly kicked off and everything. It was a bloody nightmare. But but on the plus side, what I hope came out of things like that film is that people that were perhaps a little bit reluctant to join a program like the Almanac, probably like yourself actually, John, probably a bit reluctant. Actually, if you'd have seen that film prior to joining that or another sort of Almanac,
that would have made me more intrigued. Yeah, that would have made me more intrigued.
Exactly. I can see the benefits of doing that, so I think it's kind of, hopefully it's been a kind of catalyst for other projects. I mean, yourself, I don't really need to sort of even say this, but the Restoration Trust, what Laura and the trustees, the Restoration Trust do is outstanding for mental health. Absolutely outstanding.
Yes, she is. Laura is a godsend. Laura is a godsend when it comes to supporting me of everything I do with my blogs, any advice I've got, a wacky idea for the Restoration Trust. She doesn't say no and tell you it's a rubbish idea. She goes away and thinks about it and then comes back to you. But I've got lots of time for the Restoration Trust. That they have supported me through my journey big time. Let's put it this way, I've had more help from the Restoration Trust than what I've had from my own mental health team.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be the way.
I was going to say, I mean, that's brilliant to hear in the side of the Restoration Trust, but it's pretty appalling to hear on the side of your own mental health team. I mean, that's the problem. But thank God that the Restoration Trust kind of have been there.
Yep.
Because otherwise things would have been different.
If it wasn't for the Restoration Trust, I wouldn't have started my podcast I wouldn't have started blogging regularly, because they loaned me a microphone, they loaned me a laptop. And then when it come to me updating my piece, getting either a stronger laptop and a stronger PC, because I'm a part of the expertise advisory board. She had a pot of money that she could sponsor me with to go towards a PC so that I could get a better setup to do these podcasts with and stuff. So I'm forever grateful for the Restoration Trust. I love them to bits.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
Let's go on. I'm just wary of the time, but we've got about 7-ish minutes, I reckon. What do you think about the Dr. Hill's case study book and the film you did for that? Because I've not watched the film yet, but I've gone through the book, and I might watch the film at the weekend because my partner's away at the weekend, so I might watch the film. But I was just shocked that he was bringing ideas in back then that still in some areas of this country and across the world aren't being used now when they should be.
Yeah, 100%, John. Being totally honest, when I was offered the chance to kind of get involved, I didn't know a thing about Dr. Hill's, not a thing.
I didn't.
Yeah, exactly. I'd heard about the asylum, and I'd seen some pictures from years ago that it was in disrepair and everything. And a quick kind of YouTube hunt when we were talking about it, I found people going in and seeing all this asylum, and I instantly thought, well, how can you make, unless it's something horrific, how can you make a play about Victorian mental health in an asylum? It's going to be so dark and so miserable and so, and I was a little bit, I mean, I was excited to be offered the chance, but I was a little bit dubious because I thought this isn't going to be an uplifting experience. And as you said, how wrong could I be? Once you've got to know Dr. Hills and what he brought to Victorian England, and this part, absolutely outstanding. It was, at the forefront of mental health awareness. And like you said, I mean, this is back then. I mean, it's things that he was doing should be done today, and they've only just been introduced or whatever. So
they're only just being introduced or still being talked about. It's absolutely crazy. It really is.
Yeah.
But it's Matt. I never really thought Victorian times would be so upfront with their mental health.
Yeah, well, exactly. And you know what, John, as well, when I started making the film, and then Richard sent through some research that he'd done.
He's a diamond, that man.
Isn't he just?
I mean, I've mentioned him in another podcast before. He is a
talk
diamond,
about a clever man. I mean, it's his research. But I remember him sending through some documentation of some of the case studies, and these kind of people that were in the asylum weren't really particularly ill necessarily.
No,
they just had a lot of bad luck. I mean, things like having either a child out of wedlock, which obviously back then was frowned upon, or a child die at childbirth. I mean, that would destroy you mentally at the best of times. But of course, in those, at that time in England, you were seen as a crackpot, as some, and I mean, I'm not saying that everything that Dr. Hills was, I'm not saying everything that he done was, a shining light and everything else, because obviously we're still talking about a time when things were very different. But what the thought process and the treatment levels that he brought, and the investing in people and making them, I remember reading that he would even just send them out into the garden and get them to do planting and just shrubberies and stuff. I mean, what forefront, rather than just locking them in a cell.
And do you know what, I used to work with adults with learning disabilities, and unfortunately a couple of residents I used to look after had, back then in the day when they were children, been locked to a metal pole because of their disabilities.
Jeez. And John, we're talking, not that long ago, really. I'm sure this is, I mean, and sadly, going back to Africa, I still hear of things like this, relatively speaking. Similar instances in Africa, and it's just, but this, it's dreadful. But going sort of back onto Dr. Hills, it was a real privilege to be able to film the play. It was hugely emotional. I remember after the first run through at the theatre, I remember just turning to Richard, who I didn't know at the time really, but knew who he was, obviously. But I turned and looked at him in the theatre after we just filmed the first scene, and he was in tears. Just seeing his creation come to, or his research come to life, should I say. Quite incredible. And again, it was a privilege to be able to document the good points of an asylum, really.
Definitely agree. I'm going to bring that to an end, Julian, but before we go, I would like two bits of advice. One for someone that is starting out in a photography like line of work or studies. What would you give to them if they were looking to get involved and stuff like that? And then what would you say to someone that is struggling with their mental health at the minute? And I must just say this, and I should have said it in other videos, but we're not medically trained. We are only giving advice as lived experience. We're not medically trained. I need to start saying that.
Yeah. So, all right, John. So the first one, for someone looking to get into photography or film, a couple of bits of really brief advice. Be passionate about what you're doing. I'm passionate about my photography, I'm passionate about film, and I'm passionate about working with people. That's what kind of gets me going, that's what drives me, and I love hearing people's stories. So I think forget about equipment by and large, forget about all the materialistic rubbish. Obviously you need a half decent camera and stuff, but you can get that for relatively little money these days. Just focus on being passionate about your subject, whatever that may be. If it's horse racing, I don't know, cycling, walking, doing nothing, as in, just going out and camping on the beach, which is kind of just a brilliant release. Just be passionate about what you're doing, and that will come through in your film and photography. I think that's kind of first and foremost. So don't get hung up on the gear. And then the other thing was about people suffering with their mental health. Did you say, John? I suppose I would say just talk, and as difficult that is, it's really difficult. And I find that, I'm a sole trader, I'm self-employed. I spend a lot of time on my own when I'm in my studio or in my workshop, just working alone. And it can be quite a lonely place unless you're in a forum like this, or actually on a shoot discussing with clients. But so really just talk to people, find people that you can get along with or that can offer some advice. And I think really when you find that, you'll find that a lot of your problems will be certainly maybe not disappear, but questions will be answered and other paths will open up. The more people you talk to, the more release you really have, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I know I said that was the end, but when I did my first session in schools for self-harm, I said to them, what ways, if you're struggling with your mental health, what ways can you speak out or get out to tell someone you're struggling? But if you can't feel like you can say, look, you can speak it out, then what other ways you could do it? Well, they come up with drawing, writing, rapping, singing. There were so many different answers that were coming out. It was brilliant. But I saw someone ask this question on Twitter the other day, and I was going to get involved with the conversation, but I didn't. But someone said taking pictures and making a collage.
Yeah.
I was like, actually, that seems a good way of doing it as well.
Yeah, but perhaps actually that's a good point, John. Perhaps my answer to that really should have been initially is be creative. I mean, but yeah, I mean, if you can't talk, then why not take photographs? Photograph the things that make you happy, the things that make you sad, and bring them all together. And I guess it will give you a sense of a way to analyze, perhaps. So yeah, that's probably equally as worthy, John. Definitely.
Right, I want to say a big thank you for coming along and being my first tryout on my new professional account of Zoom.
Awesome, John. Nice.
I want to say thank you for coming along. Thank you for the discussion. I wish you all the best with going to Uganda in a couple of months' time. And people, I will see you in the next one.
Thanks, John. Take it easy.